welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man that just really wants to wedge his enemies in. It's David Cross.
Wedge salad, baby. I want to cook for him, right?
No, there's a scene where Marius, which I love. I love that. Marius. I love when you introduce this big bad who's like the biggest, baddest ever in the 5th film of the franchise. But Marius walks into this room, and his generals, I guess, his other werewolf generals. So Tobias Menzies, who you might know from maybe Outlander or The Crown, award-winning actor.
From everything. He's
everything.
Everything.
Game of Thrones.
Brutus, dude. He's Brutus in Rome, which is one of the best miniseries I've ever seen. Highly recommend. Don't listen to this podcast. Go do that and then come back to this.
Hey, and Ray Stevenson, I was a stand-in for a show.
I didn't know that.
Which I love.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're much taller
Jay
than
Mansfield's car. No, we're the same height.
Really?
He's just much bigger than me.
Okay.
Like, he's a very wide man. It's like, yeah, we're about the same height. And he's cool. He's a really good dude. I loved working for him. But yeah, I just name dropped that. Had to do it. Stand-ins. I want to do an episode about Jay Mansfield's car to talk about my life briefly as a stand-in. Because it's an industry I don't think a lot of people know about. And what goes into it. So that might be a fun episode. I might do that one day. I might bring in Chris Kelly. You know Chris Kelly. Yeah, he was a stand-in as well.
He would know. I don't know what a stand-in is, but one time I was at a coffee shop and Alec Baldwin's brother was filming a video, and they used me as I sat there where he was going to sit. They were lining up and set up. And here's the thing though, Mark. It's because I refused to move and no one would ask me. I was like, this is a public space. You could ask me to move and I will. Otherwise, I'm going to continue sitting here doing my work.
Oh my. Yeah, that'd be fun. Because Chris was Liam Hemsworth's stand-in on the Hunger Games movies.
What? Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Chris Kelly of the MFF. He joins us a lot. He's the Classic American Movies podcast. I met him on we became buds on Anchorman 2. That was the one we became friends on. But yeah, all right. So Tobias Menzies, he's going into his werewolf. I'm getting too distracted. I got to finish the sentence, and then I'll bust onto something else. Tobias Menzies, he walks in, and his werewolf generals are like, we got to wedge him in. This is how we do it. We got to wedge him. And all the other werewolf guys are like, no, not the wedge again, not the wedge. And then he comes in and interrupts him. But this one werewolf general was all about wedging in his enemies. And all the other werewolves are like, ugh, not at the wedge again.
We just want to do whatever we want to do.
Yeah, this guy always just wants to do the wedge technique. Let's do something else. Also, I want to say, in regards to the vampire werewolf war, the werewolves have proven themselves to be wildly adaptable to this world.
Mm-hmm.
So in the 3rd one, we learned that they grew up as slaves to the vampires. But as history has gone on, they've started massive companies. They've worked undercover. They work out in the open in train depots, massive train depots, and they are the most powerful. And it's like, why do we hate the werewolves? Why are the werewolves the villains? I mean, what?
I would love to know. This series as it has gone on has really leaned into the vampire aesthetic and elements of it, and I kind of find the werewolves more interesting, honestly.
I just love the wedge. It's just a random line in a movie, and I just wrote "wedge him in all caps with 4 exclamation points. But it's just that's my favorite moment of this movie, the wedge technique.
Really? I mean, there's a lot of let's just say strange things happening in this film that and taking out of context is really funny.
I gotta tell you, David, this has been a 5 franchise, and I've done franchises in the past. I've done Final Destination. I've covered all of the Resident Evil films in a franchise, and now we've done Underworld. And you know me, man, I hate avoiding being negative, but sometimes you just got to tell the truth. Covering these 5 movies has been a slog.
Mm-hmm.
And I love talking to you. We've had a great time discussing the films. But I remember thinking, hey, Mark, which franchise do you like more, Resident Evil or Underworld? And I would kind of flip-flop on it. But now, if someone asks me, Resident Evil, 100%. There's no question, because the Resident Evil movies never lose sight of Alice. She is always front and center. And I think there's, Bill Nye's a good villain, but, I mean, you have Ian Glenn as the villain in the final Resident Evil. I think the Resident Evil, it's a weird comparison, but I guess as far as critically maligned movies that went on for a very long time, I got to give that franchise the the boost, because this movie, Underworld Blood Wars, which is all about them warring over the blood of Selene and her daughter, they lose track of Selene. I mean, Selene gets punked out, gets her blood drained, and then she fights Marius, dies, and then she just comes back at the end, says zero dialogue, rips a dude's spine out, and then she becomes an elder. They really lose. This is more of a origin story of how David, played by Theo James, becomes a council member.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's frustrating because Kate Beckinsale's awesome, and like in the first two, she's beast mode David. She is like, she runs stuff, and it's weird seeing her in this movie just be this like, I used to be a soldier, and I was good at, wait, when you're an elite soldier, and then she's like, I was good at it. Well, I'm like, yeah, because you were elite. But then she was like, I was betrayed. The elders wanted her dead, but then I met Michael, and then we retaliated and killed them all. But then I was captured, but I was pregnant. Then I was sought after. Now I had to hide my daughter from the world. Now I'm hunted, an outcast, a pariah. But everyone wants her alive because they want her blood to become strong. And it's just, let the Becks crush people, man. Right?
She doesn't really have a plot in this movie. Like, I know they're trying to be like, I'm coming back to the world, but it doesn't work. It's really, I'm gonna be honest, it's David's movie. He's the protagonist. So when my research,
and how close are the Eastern and Northern covens?
Who knows?
They walk back and forth. They walk back and forth.
Time, distance, none of these things matter in this movie. It's just a vehicle for showing attractive people in tight clothing and firing guns.
Wow. You know what? In that regard, that's a great point, because there's loads of attractive people in this movie. Do you think this is the most attractive? Like, I'm not trying to be objective.
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
But this is by far the best looking cast,
yeah,
I would say.
And I would just throw out there, Laura Pulliver is extremely attractive. Personally, I find her very attractive.
I mean, she's a beast in this, but I still don't understand her character, right? She's like, okay, we got to bring her back. Samira, we'll bring her back, but then that's because I want her blood, so I can be in the daylight.
So,
but then she just gets booted out of her seat, right? David comes back and they're like, peace, and she's gone. Yeah.
So I think I can help explain this to make sense of what we were watching from like a film context. The story itself is still jumbled, but how it came to be. Literally, how did this get made? So I was doing my research, and I'm sure you came across this as well. When they were planning this movie, they weren't sure if Kate Beckinsale was going to come back. So Theo James was going to be the main character in this movie. And from reading between the lines, I understand that like all of a sudden she was going to come back. So they're like, well, we got to add Selene back in, and Theo James is already like sort of the main character. So they folded her in. Which is why it's so weird. Like they're clearly trying to do a spin-off or a TV show or something with this.
You know what's wild? You know what kind of bummed me out? I bought the Blu-ray box set for this. And on each and every single one of the first four movies, there's commentaries, we're talking, the first one has hours-long documentaries. I mean, even the fourth one does. This one is not very loaded up with any extras. You get some BTS behind the scenes. You know, the costume designer has some cool things to say about the look of this one and how, you know, like the vampires are all kind of black. They went back to all black look, and then they wanted to have the Northern. They brought in a different look into it with the fur coats, but also like the armor. And I think that's probably the most interesting behind the scenes aspect of this entire thing, is just hearing about the costumes, because I don't know. It's just
I would say I think the most interesting thing is the director, Anna Forster. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, she's cool. Yeah, she's really cool.
Yeah.
And she's done some crazy, like, you know, she filmed miniatures for Roland Emmerich. I mean, that's how Len Wiseman got his start working for Roland Emmerich. He was props. So it's like all these Roland Emmerich acolytes are working on this movie. And she was also a cinematographer, too. Like, so watching this movie, I was kind of like, oh, okay. Like, she shot White House Down. I don't know, for Roland Emmerich. Like, and then, like, just watching the shows she's directed, like Criminal Minds, she's on Outlander, Westworld, Carnival Row. Like, she's done some really cool, Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
She did. And then like the visual effects that she's done. I know you know all this, but like she did miniature director of photography on Pitch Black, End of Days, Godzilla. I just love her. I love her filmography. Like she was a pyrotechnics director of photography on Alien Resurrection.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
She has
man.
a great resume, and I think you're leaving off the best part. She was the FX director of photography on Independence Day, where they shot and blew up the White House.
That's amazing.
I know. And I'm really happy that she's getting her shot. I just wish this movie would have been better, or I would say I wish the script would have been better, because there's not much to work with this thing.
They keep sidelining Celine in this. Like Marius hands it to her on the ice. And then she's like, bloop, sink into the ice.
I don't
and then
understand that scene. I don't understand it.
And then she gets spider webbed, right? And then she comes back wearing a fur coat.
Here's the question I have about that fur coat. And this maybe is really morbid. Is that a werewolf fur coat? Did she show up to battle dressed in their friend's skin?
Wait, how quick do you have to do that, right? Like so, because they go back to their human form when you kill them. So do you need to keep the wolf alive to skin it?
I guess. I'm just or they keep it alive and like cut a little bit off all the time so it grows back.
Wow. That's
I have so many weird
a werewolf fur coat. Oh my gosh.
It's pretty grim and dark, but it also I feel like this series would go there. Or I wish this series would go there actually. I wish someone showed up with a werewolf fur coat and was like completely serious about it and showed it off. Like have on the shoulders have like the heads or the skulls. Like I feel like the series got away from how just weird and dark it was, and it's now more of, I don't know, flippy, bang, bang.
Yeah. Like, remember the first one? It was very gothic.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It was very kind of steampunk. Not really steampunk, but just very gothic, very moody. And then the fourth one was very kind of industrial, I would say. And then this one seems to be a return back to what they wanted in the first one. But it's a lot more glossy. It's not as moody. And you know what's crazy? I watched this the first time many years ago, and not many years ago, 4. And I went, this is a crazy movie. I kind of like it. But I think the performances are fine. I mean, you have Charles Dance sword fighting.
It's great.
You have I actually really like the Varga. He's pretty cool. Varga is all about Samira. Wait, he's the unimaginative bedfellow. But then when David comes back, he's like, "Oh, okay, like you're the head of the coven now. I got you." And everyone's like, "Oh, it's fine that you murdered all of our peacekeepers, all of our death dealers." And then they're like, "Okay, you work for us." And I thought the final battle, right? And I actually thought like Laura Pulver was really cool with Samira. I actually thought Alexia was cool. I kind of liked her. She also snaps that dude's neck. She walks in, starts rubbing his hair, and he's like, "Ooh,
thanks, lady," or boss.
Oh man, this rips his head. But it's I thought they were so interesting, but then like you said, they just threw Celine back in this, and it. Man, like Beckinsale did not seem to even be enjoying herself in this movie.
I hate to say an actor phones it in, but like she was just on set. Like she did not have a good time filming this.
Okay, what's like she like landlined this in. She didn't cell phone it in. Like this is like
she was on a payphone, like in a parking lot, like.
Just reading her lines. And listen, everyone's gonna be like, "Mark, like this is really weird that you're hating on this." But I gotta tell you, I just think you have a really cool director who has just such a funky filmography. You have Kate Beckinsale, you have Charles Dance, Tobias Menzies, Laura Pulver. I mean, even James Faulkner. Like you have a really, like we said, just cool, good-looking cast of really good actors.
Hyper competent people. Yeah.
And